Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're feeling refreshed after the tea break and be ready for our next section. And we will have the plenary titled Expanding Trusted Notifier Network in APAC. This plenary will discuss impacts from Trusted Notifier agreements and why it is an important mechanism towards effectively tackling DNS abuse and security threats. And at the end of this plenary, we will also have a special ceremony in which several organizations from the panel will be signing bilateral trusted notifier agreements here at the forum. Stay tuned for that. And now I would like to hand over the stage for Mr. Adam Kwan, Head of Corporate Development and Strategic Alliance APAC from CSC. And I also invite the panelists for this section for joining him on the stage. Please welcome.
So while we have our panelists coming on stage, let me give a little bit of a debrief on what we're going to do today. So we're going to start with a presentation by me on what is Trusted Notifier in APAC. So this is basically based on two different blogs and info street that we have co-author, and it kind of explains what we are thinking about in terms of the Trusted Notifier network in APAC to deal with DNS abuse. And then we are going to move on to the panel discussion. Now, to introduce my panelists, I actually have this particular slide. So this is a slide I normally reserve at the end of the presentation, but I kind of move it up because I think this is a great way to introduce the panelists. So in terms of the Trusted Notifier network, it was actually started by TWNIC and .Asia organization. We have Jovan and Edmund here representing these two organizations. So they are the first in APAC to sign a bilateral MOU between the two organizations to address DNS abuse together. And then TWNIC and CSC signed. We also signed with IDCert and also subsequently last year with .top registry. We have Oliver Yang representing .top registry. He's the overseas marketing director for .top. And we have expanded the Trusted Notifier network with Line Taiwan, which is a mobile communication platform. We don't have Line here today. Oh, sorry, I missed one thing. CSC and .top actually signed together with PwC Dark Lab as well. So we have Katie Gang representing PwC Dark Lab here today as well. And, you know, we have one additional person here, Gordon Dick from Nominet. And this is basically what the MC talked about, you know, just a moment ago. By the end of the session, we're going to see a Trusted Notifier signing ceremony. And this would be between Nominet, .Asia, and TWNIC. So why are we doing this? And you know, as I mentioned before, if you are interested in more details about what we are doing, there are two ICANN, you know, blog and info kit available online, and you can actually find the link in the agenda as well. So if you're interested, just go back to the agenda and you can find the link over there. Now, but I'm going to explain a little bit about this. So when we talk about Trusted Notifier, one of the things that we need to deal with is, you know, in the ICANN community, we talk a lot about DNS abuse definition. Now, this is something quite interesting because a few days ago in the CPH Summit, we have a session talking about how we see, you know, judge which one is DNS abuser and whatnot. Now, this is another example that I normally use as well. So this is a fortune site of a bank. Now, it contains a login and sign-in button. but that button was not activated. Is it a phishing attack or is it not a phishing attack? By my definition, it is not a phishing attack because it doesn't and has not yet enabled the PII capture capability. So it is actually a fake website, basically. And you will see that this definition does not necessarily agree by every party. Some registrar and registry may consider it a DNS abuse, some may not. Well, in fact, this is one of the things that we struggle with as a community. So Trusted Notifier is not a new concept developed by this group here in the DNS abuse framework, which is signed by a lot of the registrar already. There is a mention about the role of Trusted Notifier over there, and I highlight some of the key points. I won't go through it today. So it is not a new concept, but we haven't seen a very active and public signing of such relationship. And how do we actually activate in a way that we can actually deal with real life issues? So this is what we're trying to do. So in the information that I reference, we highlight a couple of key parts, and I want to go through a few of them to make sure that you understand what we're thinking about. One of the key things about the Trusted Notifier network that we're building is what we call commercial viability. So in the current format, at least by my own kind of interpretation, we normally address DNS abuse mainly from a what I would call a social responsibility perspective. We think about addressing DNS abuse as part of my social responsibility. The government also think about whether you're doing a good job from a social responsibility perspective. And the public are expecting us to do that. So if we are not doing a good enough job, we got blamed by that. So what we're trying to think about is that we want to build a network where we are actually able to mitigate or reverse what I call a cost transfer problem. So you can imagine a phisher, by the action of creating a phishing attack, it creates a cost that got transferred to the brand owners. To use an example, HSBC Bank, for example. So the bank suffer that particular cost. They have to transfer that cost somewhere. So normally they would be using a phishing takedown provider, a law firm or whatnot, some sort of a provider to actually help them to mitigate this particular risk and the cost associated with it. So that cost got transferred into a provider, and the provider work across many brands. So they have a lot of cases that they have to deal with. So what they do is that sometimes they send automated takedown notices to the registry and registrars, and that cost actually get transferred into our community. And there's no way for us to transfer it further. So we're seeing that, as registry and registrar, our cost to deal with DNS abuse keep increasing. And we are also suffering the cost of the social responsibility. We can't mitigate that away. So what we're trying to build is that when we build this Trusted Notifier, we want to make sure that costs are effectively transferred away from the registry registrar into the Trusted Notifier network. And then if we transform that into some sort of effective takedown, that benefits got transferred downwards to the banks and the victims of the phishing attacks. And subsequently, because of this, we are able to, the phisher, if the phishing attack got taken down in 2 hours or something. So the cost ultimately got reversed into the phisher as well. So this is one of the key thing that we're trying to build. And the second thing is active planning. I don't believe whatever we're building at the moment would be the perfect model. And because there is no perfect model. In different parts of the world, in Asia-Pac, there are different kind of definition and government demand for online moderation. So we want to build the community, build a model, and then we look into how we practically resolve the real life problem, and then we go from there. That's the active planning part and the resolving actual problem part of it. And the last one would be beyond the domain name industry. Normally when we talk about DNS abuse, we talk within the domain name ICANN community. But I think everyone would agree with me that DNS abuse, phishing attacks are not entirely just a DNS industry issues. The way that we're thinking about this is that we need to actually gather the wider internet community, and the naming community is only part of it. We need to get the number community, we need to get the social platforms, messaging app, the search, the telco for the SMS distribution of phishing attacks together. Then we are able to share data, we're able to establish relationship that expedite takedowns. That would be the way that we're able to address DNS abuse, and we have to go beyond ICANN community itself. So this is why we see maybe KT here representing the cybersecurity perspective. You see that we also signed with ID CERT from Indonesian CERT. We are also seeing Line Taiwan as a messaging apps joining that network as well. So that's basically what we are thinking about. If we are not able to deal with this issue effectively, what that means is that related to the previous session on WSIS +20, government are going to intervene, and it will be representing a failure of the bottom-up industry-led multi-stakeholder model to address real-life issue. And the bottom one would be that if we are going to see continued increase of cost suffered by the registrar community because we are not able to mitigate the cost effectively. So this is, in a nutshell, what we're building. Now, I would like to move on to the panel discussion now. So give me a second to look at my questions. So I think I would like to first, address with some of the current participant in the Trusted Notifier network. So Edmund and Jovan, you're the first that signed. May I trouble you to kind of explain, in your perspective, why you started this initiative and what you hope to achieve?
Edmund here, happy to start first. So from .Asia's perspective, actually, I think very early on, in fact, when shortly after our launch, we have been very active in dealing with abuse. In fact, even through the ICANN process, there's been concerns about a lot of malicious activities coming out of Asia. So I'd like, at least to start off with, actually, I believe that .Asia has probably the first GTLD registrar agreement all the way back from 2006. We have already included a clause that requires registrars to, once we put a, whether a trusted notifier or any kind of mechanism in place to take, to take action on avoiding or suspending abusive domains. So, I think we are, I guess we're proud that we're kind of ahead of the curve. But along the years, we have very much depended on our backend service provider, especially in the 2010, 2012, around that time frame. .Asia was experimenting with lower cost domains, for example, lower price promotions, and we were happy that some of the discussions about trusted notifier systems with APWG actually transpired into services that affiliates at that time, now Identity Digital, in fact now Clean DNS, has been able to support us in tackling DNS abuse. So back to the question about why put trusted notifier in place. The reason why I bring back the history is that I think sending the message to the market that says, abusers, we are going to take action, and we are, working with our friends to take action, hopefully would deter the abuse. And, you and I know that online abuses is not going to just magically go away, but at least the least amount that comes through the domain registration system, the better. And sending that message out to the community, I think is an important part, and the Trusted Notifier network does that. And one final point I want to address, which you touched upon about cost. That is certainly the case. If I have to look at one particular case, that is definitely, that domain no longer brings any more income. And not only that, it's probably hundred of domain that no longer bring in income. So it is important. But how do we know that someone giving us information is something we can take action on? And the Trusted Notifier with other registries have that nuance and have that sensibility, because as a registry, we understand that taking one domain down is a big deal in many cases, right? The domain could have other things on it that is mission critical for a small company. If we take it down altogether, and maybe the domain was compromised on a third level or on a URL, we need to be very clear that we're not ruining someone else's business just because of that, and we have to have some kind of proportionality. Working with trusted notifiers of other registries who understand that. That's why, I think .Asia started with TWNIC on the Trusted Notifier, focused on these kind of bilateral relationships with other registries.
Thank you. Jovan?
Okay, thank you for having me here. I'm Jovan Yu from TWNIC. We are the CCTOD, we are the registry operator for the TWN Taiwan. So maybe I share a little bit more from the CCTOD perspective. We started this network, I think in almost 5 years ago. It's in 2020. So simply we just felt that we need to do something, because you can see a lot of growing concerns about the digital, landscape. So, but instead of directly building relationship with the registrars, we actually started with the law enforcement. So our first, notifier actually is were the law enforcement agency, and then later is a government agency and also security agency. So we started as an experimental project, because at the time we were not sure that it could succeed. But we do believe that it's worth exploring. So, and also because at the time we do see, the pressure, potential regulatory pressure at that time if there's no action taken. So that's why we started to work together. And also after we get a clear picture of the, the abuse landscape in Taiwan. So from in 2022, we expanded network with beyond, the TW, this landscape. So we work together with CSC, and we work together with .Asia first, and then CSC. So we think it's important to do more, because based on our data at the time, we found that over 98% abuse in Taiwan's digital landscape is actually from the domains outside the TW. So that's why. So from this year, we further extended our network to our long-term, but it's local partners. It's the ISPs and also the Line Taiwan, the largest communication platforms in Taiwan. So what do we want to achieve? Actually, I think it's everyone agree that we need to maintain a safe, digital environment, because it's important for the digital transformation, digital economy. And I think as from the CCTOD, perspective, because part of our mission is also to ensure that we have a really safe and trusted environment in our digital, environment. So I think for me, I think the Trusted Notifier network is actually is a really practical and effective approach. Why? Because we tended before, in the past, we tended to rely on the court orders, but just like what we discussed, earlier this week in the country party summit, you can see the life cycle of the phishing. Now it's lasts for maybe a few few weeks or even few hours. So you cannot really take, the court order this approach anymore. So I think it's definitely, I think we need to take a new approach. Another thing, we believe that the registrar actually have, really, good position to help mitigate the abuse. Why? Because as you know, that the crime is global, but we are also global too. And in addition, I think collaboration is part of our DNA. I think in the previous session, we talking about the collaboration. So I think collaboration is our culture, part of our culture. So we have already worked together, for a long time. So we have trust in each other. So it really gives us a really unique opportunity to mitigate the abuse and also, to address these challenges. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jovan. So Oliver, can you give us a quick introduction of .top and why .top signed with CSC and PwC? Yeah,
Hey, greetings everyone. Like the first time I joined this conference before, and in my expression before, I want to be a silent listener. But yeah, very, very appreciated you can on this stage to share my opinion. So it's because the reason we try to collaborate with PwC and the CSC is the top registry have been in the past few years, and it just increased sharply about the registration. We have met a ton of the malicious about actions, in the very short time, and we are trying to increase upgrade our system to how to defend all these abuse actions. Yeah, but it's really hard. We have to upgrade our system to try to filter all the damaging information outside, and it still cannot fulfill the increasing about the malicious actions, like all the team of the solving this abuse actions just complain a lot like Amber Heard and stuff. And that's the reason we have to collaborate with other third party who can share all this information for us. For cooperate with the CSC, because they have the very enormous the trade risking monitoring actions, and they can just save our time to do all the actions for solving this, and to collaborate with PwC because they have a lot of the database about the branding stuff, for the enterprises, and it will help us to do the pre-review for this, maybe the trademark stuff. So that's the reason we have to depends on their enormous databases and the information they are holding, and to share with us, so we can be effective. So this is all the problem we have bumped into right now. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to bring the conversation a little bit on what actually Edmund mentioned about. So certainly you would be consuming some kind of threat intelligence, and you mentioned one thing about how the trust between you and TWNIC because they understand the cost issue. So do you see any difference between the other source of information you would consume and the Trusted Notifier system?
Yeah, so the short answer is, of course, yes. Just as an example, between CERT teams and another registry, CERT teams, they look at the URL, as I was explaining, and sometimes we have had cases in the past where a particular domain was compromised in a particular directory of the web server, for example. In those cases, we often then go back to point them back to the hosting provider, because that's where probably the right action is. Of course, if it turns out, again, it goes back to proportionality, right? If it turns out that, wait a minute, all of the directories are actually compromised, and we have that information, then we might take action at that point. Because, for registry, that's the difference part, right? So with the Trusted Notifier, with another registry, they would have probably looked into that before they tell us, right? And those are the things that I guess as a very high level example, that's the difference between having a Trusted Notifier with the same kind of wavelength in terms of the sensitivity of a false positive in that sense to act.
Yeah, I think that speaks to what's the definition of trust as well, because there are the ICANN definition of DNS abuse. There are the national definition of certain content abuse that you have to, just commit to, regardless of the definition. And there are also other definitions, like in the search industry, they may have slightly different definition. Police may have a slightly different definition as well. So I wonder, I don't know whether this is an appropriate question or not, but it seems to me that even if we build a Trusted Notifier network, because there would be other parties coming into the network as well, there needs to be more education across to align definition and align understanding. So I think this, I haven't included this in my notes to you, but I just want to open this to everyone. Do you see a problem with this at the moment, whoever that have a Trusted Notifier system in place? And how do you propose this education to happen?
Let me just quickly add, right? One of the things is that when we started with the Trusted Notifier arrangement with TWNIC, when we set up a trusted channel between us to have this notification, at the back end, we already is supported by Identity Digital and Clean DNS and have the mechanisms and the systems in place to actually take action, without which we wouldn't have been able to do that. So if we rewind 10 years ago, without the infrastructure to then look into, we still have a quick look at it. It's not like that we would just blindly implement. Even the MOU says that. And without that infrastructure that our providers like Clean DNS now has, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So back to your question, as the network expands, yes, that might come in, but that's why we start with those people, the other registries that we know they know our pains, we know their pains, right?
Great. Any other comments? Maybe I can go to Gordon first.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge here comes down to the fact that when different parties are talking about what we're terming DNS abuse, it's not necessarily the ICANN definition of DNS abuse. And it's probably wider criminality aspects. And perhaps there's a need to look more around how registries and registrars put appropriate policies in place that deal with criminality that apply to them, and make sure that that messaging is clear to the wider community in the government, etc.
Yeah, I think I would like to echo Gordon's view. I think for us, because I think it's when you start with the definition, then you spend a lot of time discussing what is the definition. So I think sometimes maybe it's not so useful because you want to address the problems. So I think then we start to, just to directly address, what is the problem? What is the abuse they mean? What is the abuse, we mean? And then if we can take any action based on our own policy, so we kind of like skip, what is the ICANN's, definition for DNS abuse and what is the others. So we think maybe we directly talk about what this means, for you is abuse, what is, and then what we can do, together. So based on our own, policy. But I do think it's challenging, for the future, because I think now, because we usually just like, we doing bilateral. So it's possible we discuss, with each other in this way. But if you want to scale, it will be difficult because, then how can we, so I think definitely, after some time, we need to discuss, this problem again. How we, in our, community, we have, the maybe like a kind of like a standard, process. And for, the stakeholders outside our community, registrars, how we work together with them. I think that will be the question, the challenge for us.
Yeah, I'll be sharing a bit of my view. Thank you for having me. So my view is probably coming more from a cybersecurity background. And clearly, when we do our work every day, whether it's coming to incident response, we clearly see that DNS abuse is one of the biggest issues that we see. And just to share, we track a lot of malicious domain across all the CCTLD and GTLD, and we pass those information to people we have connection with. And I personally see that the enforcement part is really a challenge. Just taking the example of what Alban just now showing, like the banking website without login. And in fact, I even talked to some of the enforcement party in certain jurisdictions like police. I tell them that this is a potential malicious domain, and the police will ask me, has any victim actually fall into this? Has a person actually lost a monetary money? I was like, I don't know. They don't come to me. But in my mind, I'm thinking, do you want to wait for someone to actually lose money before you take action? Actually, from a cybersecurity community, actually without a login button or not is not the way how you define as a phishing domain, not at all. If you resolve the domain into certain IP addresses, and the IP address is a known malicious infrastructure, in particular in certain virus total through the crowdsourcing community, it has been rated 10 out of 10. And it has all the historical record that the infrastructure either was compromised, as used as a jump host for the attacker to attack, or was originally set up by the attacker to attack. This clearly has strong indicator that this domain is malicious or being abused. That's one. Second, there are more towards that. For example, like URL scan. Most of the phishing websites structurally will be similar, and that's how they conduct scams and how they conduct phishing. If you run through certain scans, you will know this is 100% alike. Come on, guys. This is, to me, this sort of indicator clearly tells me that this is a phishing domain. That's at least from our definition and from our experience. And that's how we do our work to protect our client. We don't, to be honest, we don't work that much with TLDs, but we work with various banks, critical infrastructures in the world, and security vendors like, whether it's from Asia or from the US, like Palo Alto, Microsoft. Young domain, malicious domain is something that we track every day. And another example I'd like to talk about is just like another banking website that Alban just showed. We track young domain every day in PwC Dark Lab. And in fact, I track the most reputable companies in Hong Kong. That's where I'm based now. Top 200 companies and all the critical infrastructure, I track that. And many malicious threat actors, they will actually register the domain, and we call them too young. They register domain, but they have yet start to build the infrastructure. And the way they do is because they try to build the domain reputation. And again, that's how most of security appliances, they do their blocking. If you're too young, they will start blocking or they give you alert. To circumvent certain security vendor solution, they need to start building up reputation. So, but when we see that, because it's too young, I cannot take action. I cannot inform the client because there's no MX record. I don't see how the phishing is going to start, not yet. But we are not giving up on this domain because we know the threat actor will start building their infrastructure later. But we are not putting this saying, oh, this is not malicious and we put them aside. No, we put in the bucket B. The bucket B is where we continue to monitor on heightened effort because we will know this domain eventually will become poison or become malicious. So again, what I'm trying to say is that the definition again, it can be broad. I just want to share a bit of my view representing the security committee. And to be honest, I just want to be direct. Even though you have a trusted notifier, the way I see now, and I can show you all the data with all the GTLD, and we track that, and we can see so many DNS being abused, so many, and I have a lot of all these data. And somehow I sometimes see, not trying to pull some cold water, I think the trusted notifier, sometimes I see is more form over the substance. There's a lot more effort that we can do. And I think the continuous monitoring over the zone file, how this domain being created, how they evolve from time, will help to definitely fight against the cybercrime. And again, the problem statement, overarching problem statement here, which I think everyone would agree, if you go to any jurisdiction in the world, cybercrime numbers is definitely double up. Definitely double up. And while we are putting a lot of defenses at the bank, at the critical infrastructure, my view is that we should go to root of the issue. That's where the internet infrastructure are being abused, being used, and we should definitely govern that. That's my view coming from a security committee. Thank you. I hope it's not too negative, but I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I guess this is actually a really good way to kind of pivot into how we use the Trusted Notifier to resolve real-life issues. So I see Edmund has some comment, and then after that, I would like to move to Gordon later on. So Edmund?
No, Katie, I think that's great, and I see a few of my colleagues here from TechOps and and other Clean DNS and others. I encourage. Well, we'll definitely exchange information, and that information is very useful for registries and registrars. So I want to add two things. One is in terms of definition. Sometimes we argue about definition. That is from the ICANN registry registrar point of view. There is a particular scope that ICANN enforcement should fall under, and that is very different from other abuses that registries and registrars take action on. So like CSAM and other things that registries and registrars do take action on doesn't necessarily have to be the narrow scope that the ICANN contractual enforcement would do. That's number one. The number two is the young domains and issues. I think, as I mentioned, right now we now have a mechanism which we don't have 10 years ago and supported by Clean DNS. We actually are able to implement what is called a watch. We call it a watch, which is exactly what you're saying. So this smells like a DNS abuse. This looks like a DNS abuse, but it's not abuse yet. So let's put it on a watch. That's I think a development from the registration and registrars community as well, and it will be very useful if we share data, because I do believe that security likes collaboration. One of the things about the Trusted Notifier that we are expanding with TW and Nominet is that we are sharing the names that have been suspended, for example, at .asia, and the reason for that is about what is called TLD hopping. So the same name that is abusive jumps from .asia to .tw or something else. So we are looking into that, and that kind of information would be very I think very useful for going into the future.
Okay, thank you. So Gordon, although Nominet is not yet part of the Trusted Notifier network as of now, it will change very soon. But I understand, Jovan mentioned they work with the police, and I know that you guys also work with law enforcement in a similar fashion as well. Can you give us an explanation of what Nominet is doing?
Yes, so from our perspective, we do have a number of trusted notifiers that are adopted from a couple of different genres, and there's, for example, our criminal practices policy. And our criminal practices policy goes beyond the ICANN standard of DNS abuse, because we're the registry operator for .uk, .cymru, and .wales, all of which are subject to the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. And therefore, from our perspective, the definition of where it would be appropriate to take action in relation to a domain and criminality can be a lot easier than it would be to an open GTLD, which is cross-border or transnational. So from that perspective, we have a detailed policy that sets out a number of areas where named law enforcement who are named within the policy, and there's currently 14 of them, can issue us an instruction where they're certifying that the domain name is being used for criminality. And in the setting out of the policy and the approach and working with them, we're deliberately being very collaborative with law enforcement, applying the law that applies to the United Kingdom, that we're ensuring that they understand what is proportional to take down at the registry versus hosting provider, etc., so that they understand the damage they could do to a business by issuing an incorrect instruction. It has the benefits of the accountability mechanisms that already exist as these organizations are statutory elements within the UK legal system, and therefore they are subject to complaints and review processes accordingly. And if we receive a notice for takedown in any of those 3 TLDs that we operate, while we'll do some administrative processes for checking, we will not seek to determine criminality ourselves. We will take those domains down. There are built into that a process where we issue the registrant 48 hours notice and issue the registrant the law enforcement agency's contact details that have complained, that have raised the notice. In some cases where there is more risk, we will take down immediately, but that tends to be very rare. But as part of this and as part of our accountability mechanisms, we issue an annual transparency report where we indicate which law enforcement agency has given how many takedown notices, and we indicate how many we've acted on and how many we haven't, etc. from that perspective. So from that perspective, that's a case of where we're dealing with the wider criminality, and it's very much easier for us as TLDs that are subject purely to UK jurisdiction to come into that process. We obviously work with our partner registries who use our registry services backend, who sometimes have a harder job in terms of working out the appropriateness where it goes beyond the ICANN definitions of DNS abuse. The ICANN definitions of DNS abuse, it is much easier for a registry or registrar to choose to take the appropriate action. And that's why I think as we expand this debate as to use of trusted notifiers, etc., we should also look around the elements of how we can ensure that people understand that the appropriateness of action, because the law in Vietnam is different from the law in China, is different from the law in the USA, and not all of the things that are criminal would be subject to that domain in each of those cases. So it's quite key to work out when to take down.
Yeah, very interesting word, criminality. So I would like to bring back to this concept, but first I want to move back to Katie, because you are not a regular participant in this internet industry, so-called. So maybe you can give us a little bit more explanation on PwC Dark Lab, and why are you interested to join the Trusted Notifier network, and especially what value do you think you could bring to this network?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so rightly pointed that out. So PwC or myself, or I think a lot of Big Fours, they are not regular participants, the way I see in the internet community. So I think, again, thanks to Alban. He was the first guy who approached me and share with me what he does in this committee and got me very, very excited. Again, primarily, dark lab like ourselves, or other security arm of the Big Four consulting firm or any essential or big consulting firm. So what we do in our work is to help clients to manage their cybersecurity risk, in short. So obviously, when you break down our services, we do lots of stuff, right? We hack, we report vulnerability. That's why when we talk about all these DNS abuse, I see there's a lot of other references. Like yesterday, we were spending time talking about, AML, how the bank does the KYC, how they do transaction monitoring over the account being abused. And again, banking is probably, I would say, that having one of the strictest KYC, I think, in the industry, I think everyone would agree now that making bank so costly to maintain and they are less profitable. They're probably outside the Fortune 1 to 10 now, probably compared to 15 or 20 years ago. Like HSBC, JP Morgan probably is Fortune 1 to 10, but in today's world, you can Google that up, Fortune 1 to 10, they all operate in the cyberspace like Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Google, etc. So again, I think, obviously, I don't believe that we should do like the KYC or the transaction money as costly as the banking, because I think that would probably not benefiting the industry. Because if you look at what happened to the bank is that, I think everyone would agree also, like bank only borrow money to people who have money. And there's a lot of society issue, there's still unbanked money, unbanked people. And that's because regulation make it costs of access so high. So if we put in a lot of costs to the registrar or registry, obviously the cost eventually will pass to the consumer. That's the way I personally. So obviously not repeating that mistake in the banking industry, but clearly again, like I mentioned just now, I see like internet, the way it's being used today versus 20 years is totally different. And moreover, I see the cyberspace becoming bigger. And all the human being innovation that we talk about, like AI, blockchain, cloud, everything built on internet. And I see DNS, internet being abused crazily. And I certainly can help to provide a lot of intelligence. And I provide lots of intelligence to corporate, helping to solve their cybersecurity issue. And I'm happy to provide more intelligence. And again, in today's afternoon, actually, we did a one-day research, only one day. I think it was in January. We took the top Asia GTLD. So no offense, some of you are here. You're so profitable, you're so big. So we took some of the young domain and we have our hypothesis. And I'm happy to discuss about the hypothesis because to me, the hypothesis is where we take the definition of phishing or malicious or malware down to an operatable level. So we have our analytics and happy to debate about the analytics. Like I mentioned about URL scan, virus total, all these alike domain, etc. So we have our hypothesis, and my background, obviously, I'm stationed in Hong Kong, and the number that we picked up malicious domain on a one-day top GTLD is about 20%, only on Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a small city, 7 million people. It's not big, okay? And moreover, if I expand my research to the whole Asia, I'm sure number will rise. So clearly, I see that is a big issue. And happy to debate or continue to discuss about it. So I think that's where I can come in. And also, just now, I heard about process. I personally participate in how to take down the malicious domain, like I just now mentioned. And I see the process is very inconsistent. And to some extent, I feel that the registrar feel like, oh, they have their rights to run their business. We should approach them. If they don't respond, we should go to this party. And police enforcement, they have their definition also. I can see the discussions is not consistent, and I don't see any SLA or a timeline that being put down. What is the timeline to actually take this down? I can see the discussion going on. I've been involved in some of this. So again, it goes back to, again, I can use an example of managing CVE. If you look at those big digital company, how they run their vulnerabilities, like Microsoft, Apple, they all publish their VTP, vulnerability disclosure policy. If you found a bug of Palo Alto or Ali Cloud or Microsoft Azure, they have a transparency on how they will receive a bug report, how they will communicate with the security researcher, and how they will rank or rate the CVE, and eventually when they will release the patch against that. And you know, and we have a gentleman like industry practice. We approach the digital company, we report there's a bug. If they don't respond, after 90 days, we'll put it on GitHub. And their product will be hacked. And again, this is something that I hope to see that the industry is taking with a timeline, with a proper timeline addressing the issue. Again, I'm borrowing some of the practices elsewhere, like the banking and the CVE management to something that we can. Again, I'm new here. Maybe, you know, when I talk about this, maybe, this guy is new, a bit naive. And to be honest, I'm learning about the process on TLD, how you guys do things. I'm not familiar with that at all. But clearly, I see the outcome or the numbers. So I'm more sharing a bit of my perspective from the numbers, and I see how other industry is doing and see whether we can reference that as a model to move forward. Yeah. Thank you.
So I think there are a couple of things that you mentioned, like KYC and even SLA. These are actually discussed within the contractor party house, the registrar community as well. I think one quick comment before I kind of move into that criminality discussion is that there are things that we are actually willing to do and really wish that we can do better. And one reason why I think it's actually quite nice for you to come to this meeting is because we need more stakeholder to come to ICANN. You know, in order for the multi-stakeholder model works, we need more stakeholder. We need, you know, more diverse stakeholders from different communities and different regions, and then we can kind of understand exactly what we're doing. So I'm just conscious of time because, but I really want to move into this mention about, you know, the word criminality. Now, in some community, like the civil society, I think they typically use another word called unlawful as well in some publication that they do. Now, I personally, let me frame my question. So in the, you know, especially when we move into like criminal things like CSAM and fraud or, you know, scam and stuff like that, these are not the strict ICANN DNS abuse definition. And this is certainly moved into more of the content moderation side of things a little bit. So in the content moderation perspective, you know, a general principle would be the you know, the Section 230 principle, and it actually the guts of it is that, you know, government don't touch this because, you know, internet content moves so fast that we need flexibility. We need to work on this based upon the Good Samaritan principle. When we introduce the concept of unlawfulness or criminality, it basically means that we have to first see the you know, the harm being done. Then we can prove that it is unlawful, and then we can take action. So do you think in general, from a From your own perspective or internet governance perspective, is that the right way to see things, or should we go back into the Good Samaritan kind of principle if it's a problem? If we, based on our kind of conscious, think that this is not a good thing, then we try to moderate it. Anyone want to jump in?
Thank you for this great question. I think for CCTOD, I think we are not only, look to the ICANN, the policy and regulate, policy, but also we are under, specific, our own jurisdiction. So I think the content actually, some, scenario is unlawful. It's in our jurisdiction. So we need to, take some actions to address that. And another point is that, Article 230, I think is, it was born, it's when the internet was born. So I don't think it is it's possible we just sustain, remain, just so inactive. The attitude, just to say, to sit back and say, what is we only have a liability when we receive a notice and then we take down. So I think maybe it's not the way, now we see the internet. But we do sensitive, about, the distinction between the DNS abuse and also content moderation. Because I think the DNS abuse, I think from the, cybersecurity, perspective, I think people have more consensus that is bad, right? Of course, then we need to decide what is efficient, and in specific cases, sometimes it's difficult. But for a definition, I think most people agree that we should do something against like a DNS abuse, phishing, malware. But for the content moderation, I think it's a really different, from jurisdiction to jurisdictions. So I think for us, we are really sensitive and we take different approach. For the DNS abuse, we tolerate more risk, meaning that we want to take more actions when we receive that. But for the content, we need to have more evidence proving that that is illegal content under our jurisdiction. So I think it's our approach.
Yes, so I think on the criminality point, I think the way that we've implemented our criminal practices policies has been built into those law enforcement investigation processes, and what we're fundamentally doing is closing the gap in terms of speed through taking it into court, etc. The process and the evidence gathering has been done. They are certifying according to the law that they believe that this is criminal and being used, and the proportionate response that they are certifying is at the registry, having been through mandatory training on process of what is appropriate for taking down at the registry. Obviously, when it comes to things like CSAM, we're not able to even investigate it ourselves. That's illegal for us to even attempt to do. So that's why we work with the Internet Watch Foundation, and they would issue any takedowns in regards to that. And the sort of law enforcement we're working with, there's the Medicines Regulatory Authority in the UK. Will deal with anything in relation to prescription drugs, etc. The Financial Services Authority that ultimately regulates banking and what have you, and various others. So they're all specialists in their own niche area. And that does really make it easier because we're ultimately just closing the gap at the end of that process. Your wider question, though, was should we go further than ultimately the criminality and doing things that are better. I think that's an issue and challenge for the legal jurisdiction of wherever any registry or registrar works, because you have very different risks, very different challenges, and very different sensibilities of the populations. You wouldn't get the same response from the population of one country from another.
Right.
Yeah,
Simon?
just I guess adding just quickly, I guess not belaboring the point, but still I want to highlight what ICANN defines and enforce is a little bit I would say a baseline. Registries and registrars do above and beyond, and so the high level answer to your question is yes, of course we will do a little bit more, but then it goes into the only thing that I want to add is that sometimes it depends on the registry as well. You know, we actually operate both .asia and .kids. And in the case of .asia, the quote unquote tolerance level, as Joe Fan mentioned, may be very different than what we do for .kids, right? I mean, we would be a lot more preventive in .kids, whereas in .asia, we might be a lot more reactive. So it really depends on the nature of the registry as well. So I don't think it's a straightforward answer to your question.
Yeah, well, I just want to share maybe one time I have met the problems like the malicious about the the reporting. It's so much of the users they have to to ask us to by the inquiry of the website and say, okay, my domain blah 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 has been server holded or banned. What's going on like that? Some of the the information just come from the reporting, like the agent, like the URL abuse, something like that, and they will show the very obvious evidence about okay, this is a pure DDoS attack, for example, and it's a pure like everybody could know it, and we do the first action is to suspend it. And when they have the requirement about to unlock it, for example, and how we can identify this, we need more like information because I have received so much about the trademark abusing, and for some minor brands, you don't even know which is the real one, actually. So that's the reason we needed more databases to just recognize which is the correct, and we will maybe unlock them after the reporting. But it is still so hard. You're right.
Thank you. So I think we should move on to the next session to address some of the potential concern from potential Trusted Notifier partner in the audience, especially. Now, so I would invite anyone who have a question, you can feel free to jump in and ask the question. If they're not, I have prepared some question that I would ask the panel, but I will prioritize the question from the audience. Thank you.
So my name is James Galvin. I am a member of the ICANN Board of Directors. I'm also a member of the Security and Stability Advisory Committee in ESAC, in ICANN's ESAC, and I am ESAC's liaison to the ICANN board. My day job is with Identity Digital, so one of the more significant registry operators and registry service providers. I speak here today from my own experience in decades of working with DNS abuse. I don't speak with any one of those particular voices at all. So I have two questions. One is the choice of term trusted notifier is interesting because like DNS abuse, it unfortunately means different things to different people in different contexts. I like in your opening slide that you carefully define trusted notifier to have two characteristics, your framework. One is to reduce liability, legal liability in particular, and two, that the program transfers risk onto the trusted notifier if action is taken. I think that those two things are really, really important because they're not part of general use of the term trusted notifier. So I'm also a little curious about any insights or reactions that you've had from trusted notifiers. I mean, what is your success in acquiring trusted notifiers, knowing that, you know, they are now an integral part of the system? That's not normally how that term is used. So that's one question. And then a related question is similarly, in DNS abuse activities, you also talk about working together between the registries and registrars and the trusted notifiers to investigate and find essentially the evidence so that you can mutually agree on the action to be taken. That evidentiary step is an important part of the dialogue now generally, because that's the thing that makes an abuse allegation actionable. So you're sort of moving that into trying to put that onto trusted notifiers to take part in that. One of the big parts of the discussion in the ICANN arena is always about, we have these amendments now in the contracts for GTLDs, but in order to be actionable, you need that evidence. So I'm asking that in the same way that you made those two prior characteristics and essential part of your framework, that you should highlight, I'm asking that you would highlight the investigative step of building that evidence and working together to do that. I think that will frame it better in the larger community. Thanks.
Thank you. Since I'm the moderator, I would refrain from answering the question. Well, I'll give my quick comments, but maybe some of the panelists can also jump in as well. So one of the things that I didn't highlight because of time is that I think by talking to Clean DNS, I think they would actually use the term trusted verifier instead. As part of what I think the framework would work is that if we are trusted in that banking example that I posted, I should be the one that as part of the trusted verifier or trusted notifier actually talk to the bank and actually get the verification from them that this is not some of the subsidiary website or a website designer website or anything that might actually be legitimate. So that verification step is actually quite important in the whole framework that qualify for the trusted status, and that work needs to be done in order for the registrar community to take action on it. If there's no verification process, we can only say that this is suspicious, to be honest, because it might be some of the subsidiary, that's creating the website or something like that. So that's certainly part of what I'm thinking, but I didn't highlight. But I wonder whether there's any comment from the panelists.
Yeah, I'll just comment. I agree with you that the trusted notifier term is generally used quite broadly across the industry. I think certainly we may have at times different levels of trust in different types of notifier. That people have talked about so far are the agencies under our criminal practices policy. But we do take evidence reports from others in an agreement that we process and take their evidence and process with a priority based on understanding that they actually share common understanding of abuse, etc. So you can then, but in those cases, we will verify the abuse ourselves.
Yeah, maybe I just quickly add, right? So again, I'm not familiar with the definition, but clearly in the security community, we have steps that we need to do in order to confirm that the domain is malicious. We have steps. And those steps can be done, like I mentioned just now, and that's how we report potential malicious domain to like the CISO of a company as well. So we can't just say, oh, there's a website mimicking yours, like probably Alban just say, maybe your subsidiary or someone is doing a new innovation, a new brand, So there are steps, I just wanted to say, and the steps will form as part of the evidence to prove that this is malicious. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Wilhelm, Public Interest Registry, weoperate.org, and a number of other TLDs. Gordon had highlighted the challenges surrounding CSAM and the fact that in most jurisdictions, dealing with CSAM reports can be problematic due to legality or rather illegality of such content. I've made a point in the chat, but wanted to bring it up for the broader audience that Public Interest Registry has a partnership with the Internet Watch Foundation, which Gordon highlighted there, that provides support for top-level domains to receive a couple of different programs from the Internet Watch Foundation at no cost to themselves, if they're not already IWF members. One is just TLD alerts for if CSAM is found on a particular, on your, quote, your TLD, and the other is participation in their TLD hopping program, where if a particular label is found to be associated with CSAM several times, then it's known as participating in hopping. It gets put in a hopping alert, and then if you adhere to the hopping policy, then you would be able to optionally, at your discretion, block that label from registration in your TLD. So these have been pretty successful programs. There's been wide participation from a number of TLDs within the room. There's always room for more. So if you're curious, I'd put a link in the chat, but of course, anybody sufficient with a search engine can dig that up, or you can find me at break. Thanks a bunch, appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll take the next question, thank you.
My name is Werner Staub. I work for Core Association. We manage a number of community-based top-level domains, among others. And, you know, have a comment about the trusted notifier idea being an excellent, you know, process, but it would do a lot better if we favored an additional ecosystem to go with it, which would be the party receiving the trusted notifier's notification, the party who will actually trust that notifier. If those are just the registries or just the registrars, that is most probably not enough. Now, we can make an analogy here. If you look at the building that we're in right now, there is a private sector company, I'm sure there is, in charge of maintaining all the information that is necessary in case of an emergency. That is, you know, a standard procedure for an important resource. You make sure that in case of an emergency, the people who need to intervene, they have all the information and the access that is required. Now, the same thing is what the domain name industry needs. It is actually kind of crazy to wait until a catastrophe has happened to then to think about, well, who do we contact now? The old system of contacting people dating back 40 years, and is still exemplified by the word contact, has broken down. It is hopeless. You know, technical contact, nobody cares what the technical contact is. It is just a piece of a record. But that was originally some kind of an emergency or contingency manager. That was the role of a technical contact. Now we could bring that back and say, yes, a domain holder can have a contingency manager on the record, a professional organization, and the registries can then say, well, if somebody has a contingency manager, a professional organization that we recognize, we can give them a lower per domain price because they're reducing the risk. Moreover, that contingency manager has, if they're trusted by the domain holder, access to resources such as has the ability to shut down email, but can maintain other resources available. Whereas right now, if the registry intervenes, it's just a nuclear option. Either do nothing or just destroy the whole thing, which is kind of extreme. So I think thinking of new elements to the ecosystem would bring us a lot more further in this respect.
Thank you very much. I guess any panelists want to respond to any of the comment? No, I would. So thank you very much. And my quick comment is that one of the principles that we're talking about is active planning, and we need to expand beyond the ICANN, immediate ICANN community, because I certainly recognize this is the problem. And the data that we share, the notification that we share, should go beyond just registrar into other parties that is more appropriate to address the actual problem. So with this, I actually want to save a little bit of time to actually move on to our signing ceremony. I would like to, maybe the MC could help with that.
Thank you to our moderators and speaker. Before we move on to the signing ceremony, may I invite you to stand at the center of the stage for a photo together. Thank you. Thank you, our moderator and speaker and the audience as well for your insightful sharing. And now we will move on to the signing ceremony. May I invite you to return to your seat? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we will move on to the signing ceremony. Trusted Notifier is one of the solutions relied upon by registry and registrar to address DNS abuse issues as well as website content abuse questions that fall within their respective policies, including those beyond ICANN remit. And a Trusted Notifier is a designated entity entering into a written understanding with a registry or registrar on a defined process for notifying alleged malicious online activities. And now we will proceed to the signing ceremony of two bilateral Trusted Notifier agreement. And we will first have the signing with Nominate and TWNIC, followed by the signing with Nominate and .Asia organization. And this is the significant moment as we expand the Trusted Notifier network beyond the APAC region. For our first signing ceremony, may I invite Ms. Jo Fan Du, Managing Director and CEO of TWNIC, and Mr. Gordon Dick, Registry Services Specialist of Nominate. Please come up to the stage. Take your seat, and now we have the signing agreement. Thank you, and please stand up for the photo together. Yeah, let's give them a big round of applause, and may I have a handshake for this special moment? Yes. Okay, and we want to take a photo that we hold the contract and exchange it. Miss Yu, please come back. Okay, to mark this moment. So can you hold the contract and exchange? Thank you so much. And thank Miss Yu and Miss Gordon Dick. Please stay on the stage for the next signing ceremony. And now we will move on to the signing ceremony between .Asia's organization and Nominate. And I would like to invite Mr. Edmund Chung and Mr. Gordon Dick will have the agreement. Thank you, and please stand up for the photo. Yes. Once again, thank you for choosing our forum as a platform for this signing ceremony. And we hope that the Trusted Notifier network will continue to expand within and beyond the region, as well as also beyond just the domain name industry, as we all work collectively to further strengthen cybersecurity. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we will proceed to lunch. Lunch is prepared outside at the ballroom foyer. The APAC DNS forum section will resume at 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and similar to yesterday, there will be a parallel track section conducted with track A section in this ballroom, and track B section are again held in Hanoi 123 on this same floor. Enjoy lunch and see you again in the afternoon. Thank you, everyone.